Um, well, I want to start off by saying thank you for having me. This is an honor. I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for having me. And the being invited is alone like such an honor. I was like, I got to be there, whatever I can do to make it. So um, I guess what I'll say is that I've only gotten to share space with Lucille Clifton once, and it was in 2009. I was roughly 21, 22. And it was at the Schomburg, and it was a pretty historic reading that I didn't really understand how historical it was, considering it was the first time Miss Clifton had been on stage with Ishmael Reed, I think from ever, or at least in a very long time. And I remember, though she was frail, she was exuberant with so much energy and joy. And I never learned about her work in school, but I knew about her through an organization I was a part of called Urban Word NYC. And certainly she was a poet that I think everyone should know. Her poems were striking and yet concise. She wasted no words. I think when I think of Clifton, she's someone that I aspire to be like, because I am extremely wordy. Use a little too many words. But after learning about her work and learning about who she was, one of the things that I realized that was her form was impacted by her day-to-day life. And that there is so much that we don't know about Black people's approach to form and the ways that we break away from form and what it informs us about our lives. I think there is still so much uncharted information and territory about the full scope of our interior lives because we don't show up on the page in a certain way. And so Lucille, for me, was a poet that I felt like defied how people talked about poetry on the page, and who was not afraid to speak poems well. To speak poems like she felt them and like she wanted to write them. And so there's, Lucille was quoting another writer when she talked about how Black children need windows as well as mirrors. I find that in today's society, we're often obsessed with mirrors or sameness as a way of affirmation. Representation and identity, though important, has not offered us the ability to reinvent or reimagine our worlds. I wonder if we ever fear that though we may be representations, we are not offering enough revelations in the world. Identity politics has evolved into a conversation about how identical we are when the sameness is truly a figment. It's our difference that transforms us. It's our difference where we are born, and it's our origin story. There's a pain for longing and connection and a deep insecurity in this country at this time. And I think that we can learn a great deal from Lucille Clifton's poems as a lighthouse, as a beacon, as she was for me. Lucille Clifton was my window, a window into a world of what it meant to be a poet, a working class poet, a poet not dictated by the literary prestige of form, but embodied by the living constraints of life. I remember the way she talked about loving and her great big love. Of all the things that I remember from that reading at the Schomburg was she loved her husband. I just remember the way she talked about him, and it made me dream of a love like that. And so what I love most about poets is when they describe things in such a way that I wish I could have found the words or lived the very being of them. Lucille Clifton is a poet that made me want to write poetry, a poet as a window, as a world, away and within. And I'm going to share some poems from a new collection of poems. This book that I recently released this month is a book that encapsulates some years I spent organizing in South Florida. And I moved to Florida for the community work we were doing, but also for the deep love that I had for a community organizer I was in a relationship with. And a lot in that relationship just taught me so much about the importance of how the personal truly is political. And so I say that to say that sometimes some of the greatest political actions we can take is loving each other. I think that's the foundation of all political action. And it's how we show up in our relationships. That relationships is what shapes movements. Relationships is how we relate to each other is what forms a movement. And so I had to learn some hard lessons, but here's some poems I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share the title poem, which is called Florida Water. I started 2020 jumping 7 waves for Yemaya on an Ipanema beach. 4 flowers hand-dipped in prayer. They did not survive the undertow. I was the whole fireworks show while my love closed his eyes, impatient with my joy, a hunger for more than fighting. Please, can we be meaningless now and leave America where it's at? The whole village in my chest is tired of weeping. Let us organize the heart, community. I'm toothing the picket signs out of my poems as we speak. Maybe I'm not a good revolutionary. I am not guided by love. I want to be it. I want to be drenched. I want to sweat and stink of love. I want to lay and not know where the day begins or ends. To be held in my own arms longer than a 2-week vacation. I want to be a poem that never works, that does not resonate with anyone. To be a poem you cannot share, so alive it is so. I sashayed into the new year, Iboga heckling my veins, set on being unafraid and triggerless, all revelation and rested shoulders. I caught a fever in Bahia, or an ancestor told me, take a seat. Write, it is time to write. Catch these poems before you whine about how we did not answer. This year was a dedication to Florida water, the cleansing. Little did I know the whole world would be rinsing too. Everyone is a running faucet, blood on their hands, can't face ourselves and one another. The vision came to me in Egypt, and there was nowhere for a lie to hide. I saw God escape religion like a breeze. Every sunset, a new download. What felt like 50-hour days or a conversation with a metallic scarab that did not make sense until it did. I could see the very beginning and the end. It wasn't so much that it was a big bang, more like a sneeze, the earth shaking us off like a bad cold, so very entitled, convinced our lives are worth something more than now. None of us are too good to suffer. Miami taught me the art of killing, a mosquito after the bite. The other day I planted a bed of healing herbs. My love brought me 2 butterflies he found on his walk, broken wings hanging from his fingertips. They sat between the rosemary and thyme, incapable of flying, all flutter and might, to love. Fear is a spirit I will not let in, cradling a metaphor. The year is not yet over. This is my attempt at doing a brief, concise poem. The porch is a throne of small talk. Making love in the South is daring. We sizzle in smoke of soil, smudge our homes with groans. The land talks back, drunk on dawn. We live lazily with the song of nightfall. Dreaming in the South is sublime. This next poem is called, Is Love a Commons? In the 5th year of side by side, he tells you he's got nothing left for you. Not even tears, no apology will do. After all, he is not meant for relationships, just mobilizing them. His heart floods the internet, a tsunami of tears for his people. What a revolutionary man who cries and shares softness. A stranger staring back at you through a screen. A timeline of prolific distance between you and him. What is socialism if it means his right to be right, except for when it comes to you? What do you call that? This trope, this boring nightmare when a man fights for everything but you? What is the restorative process? Where are the picket signs, the resistance, riots, canvassing perhaps, a sense of urgency? Who will redistribute this pain? A heart rationed by rhetoric, splayed into a statistic, a house no longer a home, but an organizing strategy for every cause but our love. Eulogies for strangers, none for your little deaths. What is the name for this triggering? A quiet town, preserving his reputation, yours too. The indifference to your sadness, it seems. What are those scarred years called? The stink of suffering. In the end, all that matters is you don't. Where is the community for those who belong to nothing? Organizing in Florida, one of the things we learned that wherever, a lot of people were surprised by a Trump presidency, but if you were living in Florida, you were not. They say wherever Florida goes, so goes the country. And I truly believe that. A lot of people don't recognize that Florida is not just a place for conservative, redneck, right-wing white folks, but there are black, brown, indigenous people, and a lot of our resistance, our origin story is rooted in Florida. Black people who escaped not just to the north, but to the south. And a big part of what we gained from that was learning that, we have cousins everywhere. There are people who fled through the South, through the Keys off to the Bahamas, to Cuba, to Jamaica. And so there were also maroon, and it's a history of black and indigenous solidarity. There were maroon communities living together in Florida resisting colonialism. And so we think it's intentional that history is hidden from us. And so while doing organizing work, a lot of the stuff that I saw us doing to try to change the state and shift the culture of the state was in alignment and in allegiance with what we have done before, what we have already gone through. So this poem is called A State of Emergency. As they were trying to ban books, I realized that the poem wasn't a place to just tell history, but to leave nuggets like breadcrumbs so that if young people ever look to the poem, they could find out the history of what's really going on in the state. So it's called A State of Emergency. Twice in a blue moon, in the rhythm section of running, this swamp sway freshwater spring spiritless spirited home of highway haunts, of conservative billboards blazing antiquated trails, long arm of land bent on the map like a waving pistol. We water, keys jingling to the Caribbean Sea, a field of graves glimmering on the ocean floor, the sunken Guerrero ship soaked, water-walking Africans, shore-shamed, gator-grill men, fools for sun-squeezed skin, of oranges and juicy fruit, mango juice chins, sticky fingers, braided palms, and pools of light, tender pebble creeks, we water, whistling in the nodding wind, daffodils rinsed by a breeze, a stream exhales at dusk, cicadas crooning, a diamondback rattlesnake in high grass, flower petals float on the flesh of rivers, agua florida, Ponce de Leon haunting the fountain of youth at a genocide theme park, the smudge of the Timucua people's slaughter. We water, fluent in the cursive tongue of hurricanes, tracing the mid-Atlantic signature on our front porches, black Seminole high priestess goddess of the Gulf Coast, dripping of abandoned dreams, and the lullaby of gnats, the sea as a doorway of syllables rising where the land mourns and the sky chokes, sinking boardwalks, buildings sob of corrupt codes, politicians snorting gunpowder, drunk on stolen votes, trickle-down delusions, panopticon self-surveillance state, a police officer stationed in your bedroom, the judge washed up on our brains, where voodoo priests, santeras, and shamans pontificate premonitions and prescribe spiritual baths from Mal de Ojo, how I-95 cut Miami like a fresh wound, seagulls chatter of nonviolent wade-ins, Virginia Key mangrove snappers, La Villa blues busting through a houseboat radio, drum circles, bar barking in the chest. How these days locals don't visit the beach, avoiding tourist terrorists with neon hats and sunscreen masks. Love bug road trips, dragonflies on a windshield. 7-year war trade, treaties and trials, imported bigotry, pines, palmettos. In Florida, the insects complain about the people. We water, Bahamian fishermen turtling on Key Biscayne. When it's race, it pours. 4 black boys dragged from their names in Groveland. 400 bullets grin, chewing at the body of a child sleeping under a tree. A mob, the color of burning flesh, whitens the streets. This is the crime no one was charged for. In Florida, there's no truth, only sentencing in cruel, cruel fragments. I think I'm gonna. Do I have time for one more? So one more, two? Okay, I'm gonna do 1.5 more. This is called Daughters of the Doorway. This is for Lucille. Okay. Y'all tell me what you need. Okay. It's a poem that I didn't. Basically, there's several poems from Lucille Clifton that I think embody the feminine in poetry in a way that you don't see elsewhere. And one of the things she talks about, that I think Rachel was talking about, was the love of the body and the celebration of the body. And she talked about, I was looking at videos of her today, and she talked about how men don't talk about their body because they only have one body part that's worth talking about, or what. So, well, that's that. So I thought of us being, as Black women, having this portal, or people who identify as women, being born with a vagina, having a portal that is a sort of doorway, and what that doorway reveals to us. And it's called Daughters of the Doorway. To move for love is to miss yourself for who you was before you is to be. She who arrives in the aftermath of a storm, who warbles with realms of reasons for being here, laboring for the hoodoo homes of our Black magic families, the royal embrace of flaw and force, healing herself, sweet tea swinging hips, a waist that whistles of aleke beads, sequin-skinned, sistering visions, rhythm spin, rippling rituals, bathwater worship worthy. We, barefoot butterflies favored by the spirits, dawn double-dutching on our shoulders, dazzling crown of locks, a chorus of curls, finger coils waving at the wind, snatched edges, brilliance braided biblically, beneath our scalps, miracles on heavy rotation, a goddess dressed in a gown of courage, basking in ancestral attitude, a garden made of carefully crafted hands, planted in a lover's sky. Planets marvel at the bronze blueprint of our beauty, the future twinkling in our eyes, giggles of gold. We glow gracefully, sculpted by sunlight strutting in our blood. Here's a portrait for the portal, daughters devoted to the deity of a doorway where dreams come and go, hanging on the hinges of our tender-headed hearts, sitting on the ledge of a window in our mother's womb. We write, waiting on a world to die. I'll end there. Thank you all. Thank you.